Chairman. Ms. Troy, you stated in your opening statement that this committee was indulging in fantasy detached from reality, that members of this committee and their witnesses make grand and vague accusations about government censorship, and that we are spreading conspiracy theories about government censorship. Would one of those conspiracy theories be that government-funded agencies were flagging and trying to censor official congressional accounts on social media? Are you denying that that occurred?
I would have no knowledge of that. I'm not aware of that happening.
Well, we're going to make you aware of that right now. Mr. Schellenberger, can you speak to this tweet? I saw that you flagged this in one of your recent articles on Substack. Can you tell us why this tweet brought attention in your article?
Yeah, because that was one of the tweets that that the Virality Project at Stanford Institute Internet Observatory had flagged to Twitter as misinformation, and that I believe it was labeled or censored in some other way.
So it was the Stanford Virality Project, that is funded by the government, is it not?
Yes, it is.
And so their purpose, ostensibly, is to stop misinformation, malinformation, and to flag things they say that might be against the terms of service of the social media companies. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Ms. Troy, is there any reason you think that this should have been flagged?
Depends on whether you're spreading inaccurate information.
Well, it references a study from Israel, a published study from Israel, and the tweet just restates the title of the study. Does it trouble you that
companies to review their policies? It's an internal choice.
Yeah, are you going to sit here and maintain that it's a conspiracy theory that this occurred? We have the documents. Mr. Schellenberger has the documents that showed that this occurred.
Well, then it was flagged for a reason.
What's the reason? Is there ever a good reason to censor a member of Congress? This is my official account. This is not a personal account. This is not a campaign account. This is my communication with my constituents. And by the way, I bring this up not to claim that members of Congress have more right to free speech than the general public. In fact, I don't even think the press or the media has more rights to the First Amendment than the general public. The general public has the same rights that we have. And I bring this up to show, number one, that your testimony is false. But number two, if they can do this to a member of Congress's official account, they can do it to anybody. Now I want to move on to the origins of these programs. Mr. Schellenberger, can you tell us about the Cyber Threat Intelligence League? Was this just a group of vigilantes, concerned citizens, or was it in any way connected to the government? And what did they endeavor to do?
Yeah, this was, so first of all, it's a pretty ludicrous founding, which was that this is a group of, it was Israeli, so-called former Israeli intelligence, former British intelligence, also working at Microsoft, and others who basically said, we're going to volunteer our services. These are some of the world's greatest so-called cybersecurity professionals, volunteering their services to multi-billion-dollar hospital and healthcare organizations whose own IT organizations spend millions of dollars a year on cybersecurity, supposedly volunteering this. This was the premise of the whole thing. It then created this third part that I mentioned. They had physical security, cybersecurity, they added cognitive security, and the people that did that were 2 UK and US military contractors. This was one of the most sophisticated disinformation operations that I've ever seen. I've been involved in progressive causes for over 30 years. I've never seen anything so organized, anything that was so focused on a particular goal and that had so many people that came from military and intelligence organizations. It gave me the creeps just reading about it.
And in the documents, is it true that they used their agency seals, FBI, CISA, when they were communicating with each other?
That's right, and the whistleblower provided screenshots of Slack conversations that included officials from DHS, Facebook, and the CTIL League. So it would be hard for somebody to claim that these folks weren't agents of the government or acting in coordination with the government or using things that they learned in their government. Were some of them still employed by the U.S. government when they were undertaking this? Yes, Pablo Brewer was working for the U.S. Navy at the time, and The others were many of the others were claiming to be volunteering their time even while working their day jobs for the government.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, there's a term in behavioral science called the weaponization of incompetence. That is, it refers to the tactic of employing deliberate or feigned ineptitude or stupidity in order to avoid an unwanted task or responsibility. And I dare say that is what the Republican leadership is involved in this committee. This is the last hearing, even though this subcommittee was launched with great fanfare. We have not had a hearing in this subcommittee, this select subcommittee, since July. And not only has so much time passed, but at today's hearing, we bring back the same 2 witnesses that we heard back in July. Actually, Mr. Schellenberger mentioned 9 months ago that he had been here. And so I'm just cognizant of the fact that this is an investigation of the federal government, right? The federal government. That's who we're supposed to be investigating. We have 4.3 million federal employees. We have 2 million retirees, all of whom would be available to come here and testify about their experience for these allegations of weaponization of the federal government. And yet, we bring back the same 2 witnesses we had many months ago, and we bring back, by her own description, a time traveler from Canada. I love Canada, by the way. And if this was a hearing on the Canadian government, I would have Canadians lined up out in the hallway, ready to testify. But the only witness here that actually experienced in the federal government and could testify to that is Ms. Troy, and I'm very thankful for her testimony. You know, I'm old enough to remember Republicans who knew what they were doing, and I miss them. I'm old enough to remember a Republican president who stood up to Russian dictators, not suck up to Russian dictators. American presidents, Republicans, who told Mr. Gorbachev, take down this wall, stood up for democracy, defended our democratic allies in Europe, didn't look for excuses that, well, the money's not in the budget, so we can't defend Europe. And that's what I see here today. Ms. Troy, the effect of incompetence in government at extreme levels, is that not itself a threat to national security?
Yes, it absolutely is.
So in our government, we recently spent 22 days without a Speaker of the House due to infighting, and we went through multiple candidates. It was like an episode of one of those reality shows. We had another candidate, and the only reason the recent Speaker got elected is because he had the distinct quality that no one really knew him. And so he was chosen as our next Speaker. And the litmus test was whether or not the next Speaker was subservient enough and adherent enough to the former president who runs the Republican Party out of Mar-a-Lago. But that's not all. In June, the House Republican leadership brought us to the verge of a catastrophic default on our national debt, one that leading economists warned would be a first in American history and undermine the full faith and credit of the United States government and lead to a global economic meltdown. So now we're facing a war in Europe, a war in the Middle East. We're facing a looming shutdown again of the United States government, and we're dealing with the weaponization of the deep state, which seems pretty shallow at this point, with the paucity of witnesses that the Republican majority has produced. I hope at some point we get back to the business that America here, that sent us here to do. This is not it. This is crazy conspiracy theory that we're pursuing here, and we ought to get back to the business that America demands us by virtue of our oath of office. And I yield back.